in mind as to where business was going to be, where residential was going to be. And it was a time that the town was going through incredible growth. But, you know, many of you know my father as being, well, kind of, I don't know, stubborn. You know, maybe he wasn't really receptive in a lot of ways sometimes, and that was true, and it was also, of course, somewhat true as we were being raised. But there was another side that you didn't see, and that was that, you know, he'd hear it, and it might take 2 or 3 weeks, but in a lot of cases, if he heard it, and then all of a sudden there was a flip, it was because he heard it and he considered it, and his initial gruff exterior didn't, you know, wasn't really what he was thinking. But what I would like to say, though, is we have, you know, I have a father, and I have a mother, too. My mother was, in our family, the listener, the communicator, so I would hope that what I can bring to this is that I've got both of it. Yeah, I've got some of the common sense that my father has when it comes to developing a community and things of that sort. But trust me, you want to talk to me, I'm easy to get hold of, I will listen, and if there's an issue that you want me to take hold of, I will do it, because that's the way I was brought up.
Thank you. Clergy. Yes. All right.
He's a little more relaxed today.
And then we have a question directed to Mr. Yudelson. Someone back there had a copy of Mr. Moore's, one of Mr. Moore's campaign ads. He didn't write down the concerns, but there's a desire to have you address some of the claims and accusations that we've been seeing in the media. So, without disparaging your opponent, if you could just keep to those issues.
Can I say something about Mr. Breese instead? No, I will do that, and I just want to say, I know I wasn't asked to answer Ken's question as well, but I'll just comment as the person who worked for Jim Breese for over 20 years, but then ended up running an election against him and being the person who replaced him, that, as Ken said, there was a side to Jim that a lot of people didn't know very well. And, you know, one of the things is, yes, I don't think I ever had a meeting with him that lasted more than 45 seconds. But on the other hand, maybe he didn't like being told what to do, but he definitely did listen. And I think there's a lot of evidence of that around town. And I'll just pick one example because I think it was just something that could easily gotten past us if it hadn't been for Jim, and that's the Tinker Nature Park, which was something that was put forward, and a lot of people probably would not have gone that route. It was kind of outside the box, and something that a lot of town supervisors I know probably wouldn't have done. And Jim was very committed, as most people know, to developing our park system. Thought that was a great idea. We put a lot of resources into it, and we have just a unique asset, you know, for the town. So about the things that if I'm not being asked about any particular thing in general, what I would say is that, as I referred to during my opening remarks, there really hasn't been anything to this campaign other than making criticisms of me. But if you go and look at the record, I guess that's what I would say to people. All this stuff is on the town record, so go look it up. The things that have been said that now are leveled at me in little, you know, blurbs in the brochure as criticisms are things that almost without exception, Jack voted exactly the same as I did on it. So he'll say, you know, I didn't do this, and then I'll look and find out he voted the same. He said that I gave somebody a big raise. And I know there's a lot of employees who probably wish that I could give out raises individually. I can't. The town board gives the raises. And, you know, just further, the raise that he talked about, he voted in favor of every single. It was a series of raises. He voted in favor of all of them. He actually introduced the resolution on a couple of votes to make the raise. So again, I would encourage people to look at the record. We've had quite a bit of mailings, quite a bit of flyers. You know, Mr. Moore is self-financing the campaign and is in the enviable position of being able to do that. So, you know, there's been a lot of that, but as I said, if you go through that record, you'll find that part is consistent, that the record doesn't support the things that are being said.
And One of the questions too was about the so-called surplus that you had. Would you like to address the surplus?
The surplus that we refer to as our fund balance. First thing I'll say, we do have about $18 million in our surplus. I can't take credit for all of it. About half of it was there when I became supervisor. The charge has been that these are excess tax dollars, and that's just not the case. We have several different funds that we have to maintain. We have our general fund, but we also have a highway fund and a library fund and sewer fund. These all have to be kept separate per New York State law, and how I referenced before, they tell us how we have to do it. We get, unlike a lot of other towns that have a good part of their revenue stream based on property tax. As you know, our property tax is very low. Each year, only about 20% of our income is based on the property tax. And then in addition, it's a little over $3 million a year, about $3.3 million. Most of our surplus is in our general fund, which supports everything other than those things I mentioned, the sewer fund, the highway department, the library, all those ones have to be separate. But the tax dollars, if you look in our budget, and it's all online, every tax dollar that's collected by this budget that's approved by the town board, including Jack, all those dollars go to just two places. They go to the highway department and they go to the library. They pay for those. Those two funds together right now have about $1.25 million in them. So you could even reason that there hardly any of it is. Why we have a good fund balance right now that is really the envy of most of the other towns that would love to have the situation we have of having a good surplus and hardly any debt is the result of smart government, things that myself and the town board have worked on for increasing efficiency, things like the healthcare consortium. We've done one thing that I have maintained since I've become supervisor is that if we have a position come open, if it's at all possible, we keep it open. That way we haven't had to lay off any staff like some towns have done, but we have probably about 7 positions. We have less employees working there now than when I became supervisor. And we've also enjoyed, like other towns, some revenues that far exceeded what anybody expected that aren't directly from town operations. We get a share of the sales tax that's collected within Monroe County. It's not based on what's collected in Henrietta, but we get a share based on population. And whereas we, like all other towns, budgeted pretty conservatively because we didn't know with the economy what it would do, the sales tax has been incredibly healthy, and all the towns have enjoyed bigger shares than they should have been forecasting for. Last year, we got about $800,000 more than we anticipated, and it's for some of those reasons and those practices that we have the surplus. And the only other thing I wanted to say about it, because it was one of the things that was out in these advertisements quite a bit, was that it was split up amongst many, many different bank accounts, 34 different bank accounts. And I'm not sure really what the concern was, but it was said in a way that was rather alarming. But the actual truth, and again, this is just public record, it's reflected in our audits that we have every year, is that over 90% of the money sits in just 2 bank accounts. The rest of the money that it makes up all those other bank accounts that were mentioned are things that have to be kept separate, again, per New York State law. We have to keep the library money separate, the sewer money, the highway money. We have to have an account when developers are directed to put up money that's held on to make sure they finish their projects. That has to be kept separate. We have accounts for payroll, we have accounts for accounts payable, paying our bills. And actually we talked about that at a meeting back in April, May, I think it was, when the auditor came in and went over this year's audit, well, last year's audit with us and explained that all to the town board. So I'll stop there.
We're talking about finances, and you made reference to not replacing certain jobs, and I think it's just important to realize some of the smart decisions that I think that have taken place over the last several years. One of the things that's happened is we had kind of a primitive system where if you came into the town clerk's office or came in to talk to code enforcement and you needed a document that referenced years ago, they have to take an employee, go into the basement, go into these file cabinets, fill out the documents, hours and hours were lost. And Mario, who's somewhere, there you are, Mario, at the time was our computer guru, and he actually up until, how many years ago was that when Mario and you? 2? You were there, you left 2 years ago. How long were you with us?
Almost 12.
Okay, so about the time we came on the board, Mario was hired, and we really developed this whole computer. I'm going to say we started to really try and bring the town up to the right century as far as computers. And Mario suggested, and along with Michael and the town board, they brought in a program called DocuWare. And now departments are talking to departments through the computer. You come in, you ask for documents, they can access this right at their fingertips. It cost a lot of money up front, but it saved the town a lot of money in employees, time, efficiency. So a lot of those kind of things are happening where I think as a town board, we are moving ahead very efficiently. And sometimes it means we can get rid of an employee because we've got computers and so forth that can maybe pick up the slack a little bit.
Okay, I want to allow just a few minutes for any questions from people here on different topics than we've heard already. So if you've got a question like that, and haven't asked a question already. Yes, Lynn.
What's the update on the dome?
Update,
Sale of the dome?
an update on the Dome Center.
As far as the sale of the dome, we have had, as most of you know, the Razor Sharks pro basketball team. The owner had made an offer that was accepted by the Monroe County Fair and Recreation Association. They were supposed to close back in the spring. That was postponed. They were supposed to close in, I think it was June. That was postponed. There's been 3 or 4 closing dates, and they've all been missed. Now, despite the name of Monroe County Fair and Recreation Association, it has nothing to do with Monroe County. It has nothing to do with us as far as the operation. It's a separate not-for-profit, so they don't, go through us and explain what's happening. But I understand that the investors are somewhat shaky on this, so we don't know if they'll close and go forward or if they'll put it back on the market. But I do want to say, because this has been part of the campaign too, is that there's been some information out there that the town board wanted to buy the property, and that I dragged my feet on that, and we lost the opportunity to do that. And that's just not the case. We did talk about that on more than one occasion, whether we want to do it. Most of the board clearly preferred that some private developer come in. We didn't want to be in the development business. If we were to own it for town purposes, obviously it would keep it off the tax rolls. We did talk about having an appraisal done. That request was made by Councilman Moore, and I went forward on that. That's the thing that he said I dragged my feet on. What we actually did, Councilman Mulligan and myself tried to save the town some money by contacting the bank that was involved in the financing for the Fair Association and see if they would share their appraisal information with us. And then after 6 weeks probably back and forth on that, they told us they couldn't do that. So we started moving towards getting our own appraisal done, but by that time they had struck this deal with the Razor Sharks that still hasn't happened. But specifically to what was levied at me, there was information that's been out there that Jack had the town board authorized offer to purchase that property, and that's just not the case. The town board never took a vote on that. The town board just in their discussions, nobody else indicated that they wanted to go ahead and purchase that, and no offer was ever made by the town of Henrietta for that property.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for Zinck.
Okay, for Jen Zinck,
Are
okay.
you being nice to me? Yes.
My name is Gladys, and I've been around for a while, and tonight I really found out why I can't lose any weight. I count for about 5 minorities, okay? Consider that. But I was out of town recently, and when I came back in town, and the first thing I saw was a sign with you and Mr. Breese's name on there with Mr. Moore. And I knew why, but it was still kind of shocking to see that. And I just kind of felt that was very confusing to people that maybe did not understand what had happened along those lines, And I wish that you could explain that and if something could be said about that. But before you do that, I'd like to say to Mr. Breese, I worked with your mother, and she was absolutely wonderful. And your father was absolutely great to me. He visited with me up at Monroe Community. I just want to say you had beautiful parents. And
They work with them both, they were something.
But that was
So
that
everybody,
is
You've touched on a very sensitive topic that I
Yeah, it's
really
very
kind of need to dance
I'm
around.
not sure
a little bit.
everybody heard the questions.
Okay, all right. The question is that Gladys went out of town, and you know, during the primary, I was very supportive of Michael and on his literature, and
Right.
you know, going out to support Michael. We had the primary, and then all of a sudden you saw my name on a sign with Jack Moore.
right, because see, I got two
Yes,
shirts now.
I know,
that have your name on it.
and it's confusing, and I understand it. One of the other things Gladys said is that you find this sign shocking, and I have to tell you, every time I see one of those signs, I find them shocking as well. With that said, I am on, this is kind of how it goes. I am on the Republican Party. The Republican slate at this point, through the election process, is Jack Moore is the Republican candidate, officially the Republican candidate because of the primary. And Mr. Breese and I are the Republican town board members. They did not need my permission to be on that sign. So I leave it at that. They did not need my, now you have not seen my face in a brochure, you have not seen those things, you have not seen me going door to door, but I had no control whether my name was on that sign.
Okay, one other question to go along with that is,
You're not being nice to me, Gladys.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be. I'm between two nasty people here.
But well educated.
You mentioned that you guys have to work as a team. And by the way, my old boss is sitting back there, Mr. Page, so he can take me on the control. Okay.
What did she say?
She said she worked with Mr. Page and he's fabulous.
You were talking about being a team member.
There you go, Gladys.
You were speaking about being a team member. As you know, you guys work. How in the world are you going to work with, you know, Mr. Moore? Who I have nothing against him. I truly don't. But how is that going to work? Let's just say if he did win. God forbid. I will say that because I'm an old lady and I can say kind of what I want to say, but I don't understand how you guys could work with him as a team. If you understand what I'm trying to say?
I can
Thank you. Okay.
I had 4 daughters, I'm tough. I like to think of myself as a professional. I like to think that I hold my own, because I do. I like to believe that I speak my mind for what I think is the right thing for the people of Henrietta, and nothing would change in that regard, no matter who's in the supervisor chair. You're right, it would be a different environment, and it would not necessarily be the most comfortable environment, but I'm a team player. Whoever the people elect, I will need to work with. So I just give my commitment that no matter who, I will. Oh, I don't want to.
That mic is becoming hotter and hotter.
Let's
We're gonna take one more question. Okay, yes, sir.
I understand that on the platform this evening, we have representatives of the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. But I believe that there are also endorsements from other minor parties. Could you indicate what those endorsements are? If that's a follow-up question.
I am endorsed by the Republican Party and the Independence Party. You are endorsed, Mr. Breese.
By the Republican Party, the Conservative Party, and the Independence Party.
And are you taking notes? This is confusing. And I am on the independence and conservative line and endorsed by the Democratic Committee or Democratic Party, but because of it being past the deadline for changing the ballot, won't appear on the ballot, so you can see me on the conservative and independence lines.
So when you go in the booth, it's a little bit of this.
Anybody can vote for anybody.
Yes, anybody can vote for anyone.
Follow-up question. Given the fact that you were also endorsed by the Independents and Conservative Party, do you accept the platforms of those parties? Are you obligated to take those positions, such as the Conservative Party being against same-sex marriage and being against women's reproductive rights? Do you support those aspects of those platforms?
I'm not for example. I don't have them.
That's a good question. I'm not going to dance around the question. I mean, my primary beliefs in, when I look at the Conservative Party, the Republican Party, or all the parties really, and I look at government, is that I'm most concerned of the fiscal aspects of it. I will not sit up here and tell you that I have any opposition whatsoever to the points that you brought up.
To clarify, I said fiscal aspects, not physical aspects.
Fiscal.
Yes.
And I would agree with Ken and say that really at the level of government that we're involved in, that's what we're dealing with, is fiscal questions and other things. Some of the things that are play out on the national stage that get broken down into conservative or liberal or any of those issues are never going to come up to the town board. And I think people have been, over the years, not just the members of the board currently, have been pretty good about recognizing that and not getting caught up in making divisions amongst the board based on what might be their beliefs nationally. And I say that when you're talking about things down at that level, we're the people that represents closest to the people, so I think in some ways we're the most in tune with them, and I think even when you look at it that way, there's not such a clear line as you're for this or for that. I'll leave it by saying one of the conservative values is not having government intrude in so much into people's lives, but yet some of the positions that you're asked to talk about, to say you have conservative values or not conservative values or whatever it might be, is exactly that. It's getting into government telling people how they should live their lives, and that's pretty troublesome.
I'm just going to add on to what Michael said there. One of the main reasons that I myself got into this level of government is because of just what he said there. This is the level where you are really closest to the people. You can understand what, they can talk to you, you can understand, but the beauty of it is you can also see the response. You can see what you're doing quicker, a lot quicker. So if you've got things and issues in the community and you've got the ability to change them for the better, you can do it at this level and it can happen pretty fast. You can't really do that at any other level of government, even when you get up into the county or into the other areas. You get the county, the state, the federal. If you've got really great ideas, to get them implemented, and by the time that they might actually get to it, you may be retired.
And just to piggyback off we're the closest to the people, that's what I love about it, is you go to Wegmans and 4 hours later you go home. Because you run into all your neighbors, and it's the forum where people can approach and ask questions. What's being built here? What's being built there? I go to the senior center, I'm able to see their faces and talk to them and know the faces of the people you represent. And that's the most joyous part about what we do. And if this is fast government, I would never want to be at a higher level, because let me tell you, it's slower than I like to see things sometimes, but you're right, it's faster than other levels.
Okay, I think we need to end our formal question and answer period.
Back here.
Yeah. Okay, one more.
First off, thank you, Mr. Supervisor, town officials, the pastor of the church. I have to read what I read because I'm learning disabled. And so I too was in the youth program of yesteryear, so I appreciate that. Now I'm on the other end of the seniors, okay, so just bear with me 30 seconds. Commander United States Navy, 33 years, naval intelligence. I connect the dots. I'm all about facts. If it's a scale, I balance the two. And I really need to hear some facts tonight. Because I promised Mr. Yudelson, and I did deliver. I was out there petitioning for you, and I got signatures. And so I do a balance. I do this balance. Because I was at this man's house not too long ago, and when I saw the sign out there, I had to put more sign up on his lawn. I went, oh boy, I'm in trouble. But I listened to him, and I'm here because I want to hear some facts. So let me just ask some questions. Mr. Rick Page, I thank you. When I was unemployed for 2 years looking for a job, I went out to everybody looking for help. So Mr. Rick Page, I thank you for being there for me. Became very emotional for me because I see the flag there and I see we're in church. I didn't hear the Pledge of Allegiance and I didn't hear a prayer. When it's all said and done, we're all going to die.